Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hard Questions with Elaina. Welcome back to my car for the third time. I'm really excited to be doing the third video in our Is the Bible True series. So I have been super excited to make this video for you guys. This is probably the one that I most have been looking forward to because it's got the real juicy good stuff in it that you guys have been waiting for. Today we are going to be tackling the question of not only was the Bible copied down correctly, but now is what it says true? Did the authors accurately record history? Were they just making up some story off of the top of their heads, or were they writing down facts? Because we want facts. We want to know that what they're saying is trustworthy. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. That's our question. Without any further ado, let's just get into it. So the first fact that we're going to look at is that all of the New Testament books were written in really close proximity to the events that they're describing. The reason that we know this is because none of the New Testament books mention the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, which happened in 70 AD. The fact that they didn't mention this means that it probably hadn't happened yet when they were writing, because this was a huge historical event. And actually, most of the books talk about the temple and describe the temple like it's still in effect and working order, meaning that it probably hadn't been destroyed at the time that they were writing, which dates all of the New Testament accounts to 70 AD or earlier, meaning that they were written less than 70 years after the events that they were describing happened. Now, this doesn't prove that they're true in any way, but it just gives us a higher probability that they could have been recording what happened in history. It means that eyewitnesses to events still would have been alive and living. It means that people could go and check different places, sites, people. All of the things recorded would have been very verifiable by the readers of these works. And so that just means that it adds one more level of credibility onto what they wrote. So piece of evidence number 2, I've actually talked about this in a previous video that I did. I think it's my Is Jesus God one, but pretty much what it is that the writers of the New Testament, many of them, not all of them, but many of them were killed for what they recorded or taught. All of the writers of the New Testament either claimed to be eyewitnesses to the events that they recorded or to have interviewed eyewitnesses. And then these same authors, a few years later, turned around and were martyred for what they taught and what they believed. The only thing that this proves is that they weren't lying about what they thought they experienced. They weren't trying to trick us, because no one willingly dies for a lie. These authors were the spreaders, the starters of the religion of Christianity. If they knew that what they were recording was just a myth or a legend or something they made up, there's no way they would have been willing to be killed for what they taught. And yet many of the apostles were, and we have outside confirmation from non-biblical sources that they were in fact killed for their beliefs. So the fourth piece of evidence actually goes along with extra biblical or non-Christian sources confirming the apostles' death. Not only did these non-Christian sources confirm they died for their beliefs, but they also confirm a lot of what the Bible records as history. So we have other historians, writers, just documents, letters of people who wrote around the same time that the apostles were writing the New Testament. And what they say in their book confirms in various different levels some of the events of the Bible. So people like Josephus, Tacitus, I think Pliny the Younger even mentioned Jesus in their accounts, and kind of that at least that he was a historical figure. Some of them mention how he died, that he was crucified. So that type of stuff, we know that it was an actual historical event. People like Suetonius, now the Jewish Talmud. There's a lot of sources, I can't even remember them all off the top of my head, that mention different events that happened in the Bible and just confirm that no, this was history. This wasn't just being made up by somebody. Everybody knew about it. Everybody was recording it. So piece of evidence number 5 goes along with that last one then, and saying we have over 30 historically confirmed people from the Bible that we know were actual historical figures. So these are people like Pontius Pilate and Herod and Caiaphas, the high priest. And we know that these people actually lived because of, number one, extra biblical sources, and also archaeology has confirmed that they were people in history. The reason that it's important to know that the New Testament talks about them is that because it means that the New Testament writers weren't just circulating lies or a story, a made up story, because you couldn't make up a story that involves Pontius Pilate when there's people who know Pontius Pilate and people who know what he did living all around you who are able to verify your story. So number 6 that we're going to look at, this is more looking at what the writers actually wrote about. And I just find this one really interesting, is that the New Testament writers recorded embarrassing details about themselves. And this is just something that, in general, people don't do if they're making up a story. If you're inventing a story, especially if you're inventing a story to make yourself look good or gain popularity, you're not going to put in there details that you don't want other people knowing. They recorded embarrassing details about themselves. They recorded, not embarrassing, but seemingly kind of controversial details about Jesus. His teachings, some of his teachings are kind of drastic. If they were trying to create a religion or something that would be catchy and that people would grab onto to gain popularity, there's a lot of stuff in the New Testament that they should not have put in there. Along with this as well, and I mentioned this in my resurrection video, is the fact that they recorded sources for their information that wouldn't have seemed the most credible in this culture. The thing that I'm thinking of is how the gospel writers recorded that women were the ones to discover the empty tomb of Jesus on the Sunday when he resurrected. Now, in first century Jewish culture, a woman's testimony was regarded as nothing. So if these men were trying to build a credible account or make it look like they knew what they were talking about, there's no way that they would have made women the main witnesses to this event. The fact that they recorded that women were the main witnesses means that they were probably telling the truth and just recording history as it happened. They do this a lot of times throughout the New Testament, where they record unlikely witnesses or verifiers that normally you wouldn't put in the story unless it's just what actually happened. So the last piece of evidence that we're going to talk about on here, and believe me, there is a lot more. I'm just trying not to make a half an hour long video for you guys. But this one is just kind of common sense to think about, is that the writers of the New Testament were writing at a time and in a place where every single thing that they wrote down could be verified. So the original eyewitnesses, the people who claimed, who were the spreaders pretty much of what they were writing down, were still alive. So people could go up to them and ask them what they saw. In fact, not only the eyewitnesses to Jesus' resurrection, but people who heard Jesus teaching, who, were there when he was crucified. All these people were still living. So if they were writing down inaccuracies or things that were wrong, they would have been able to be pointed out. Another thing just to note along this line is all these places such as Jesus' tomb were still around and in existence. So if these disciples or apostles were writing down that Jesus rose from the dead and his tomb is empty, guess what? Everybody knows where his tomb is. If they want to go and check for themselves to see whether or not his tomb is empty, they can very easily do that. What's interesting about this is that the religion of Christianity spread like a wildfire during this time. And it's hard for me to see how a religion could take off in an area where people knew that Jesus' body was still resting in the grave, that Susie so-and-so over here who actually heard Jesus teach is telling me that's not what he said. They're just writing it down wrong. It's hard to believe that the religion of Christianity could have spread so fast when there were so many ways to verify what these authors were saying. So that's a list of 7 facts as to why I believe that the New Testament writers accurately recorded what happened in history. Next week, what we're gonna do, and this one will be a fun video as well, we're gonna look at some of the counterclaims, or like the arguments against why the Bible is credible, or that the New Testament authors accurately recorded history. We're going to kind of look at like what the critics say and see if they have good arguments, or if we have anything to refute them with, and just kind of look at that, which will be very fun. I love you guys all very much. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next week with another video. Bye. Stay warm too.